Okay, guys, we got a bit of a problem. We got like a level 6 zombie teching tumble, level 6 zombie infestation outside. It's pretty bad. I disguised myself. These are not the kind of like Walking Dead zombies. These are just kind of the walking around slightly scarred zombies. So I fit right in. But yeah, we don't have a lot of time. So I decided to spend my last, 10 to 15 to 25 minutes on this earth discussing Zombie Man from One Punch Man, because that makes sense, I remember back in the old days of, like, reviewing stuff on the internet, like in, like 2007, 2008, like, most popular reviewers, they had to have, like, a storyline going along with it, like, alright everybody, I'm a spaceman on a distant planet, and it's just, like, the inside of the back of their car, or whatever, and it's like, okay, while I'm sitting around here waiting to get devoured by a bunch of aliens, I'll review a movie, it always has to tie back in. I think at some point, the internet just decided we don't want the skits, we just want the actual content, so fine, I'll get to it. Zombie Man! This guy is freaking popular. Let me tell you something. Just doing research for this video, going around getting as many, pictures as I can, going on Google, just searching for things, I found so much fan art of this guy. Way more fan art than any other S-Class hero I've seen up to this point. I think even more than Genus, just because he's a cool-looking dude. He's like a freaking action movie, video game. Like, this could be the main character of a video game, totally. Like, pale skin, red eyes, scruffy hair, covered in bandages and blood, trench coat. Every badass needs a trench coat. He carries katanas and axes and, like, guns. He's got, like, a Smith & Wesson. He's got a Desert Eagle, which is honestly the coolest sounding pistol of all time. Desert Eagle. And this is who he is, and his whole thing, his shtick is very simple. He's Zombie Man. He can't die. He has regenerative capabilities. He can heal from any wound, pretty much. There are limitations to this, but so far in the series, we haven't really seen him. We saw him get cut, bludgeoned, stabbed, burned, crocodiled, king cobra'd, attacked with a disintegrating ball of light, getting all the flesh burned off of him, and he still comes back, and that is Zombie Man. It's pretty self-explanatory, but I'm kind of scattershotted. I'm kind of all over the place. I need a cigarette. Oh, right, I don't smoke. Okay, tea, caffeine, yeah, that's good. So he first shows up along with a lot of other S-Class heroes at the S-Class meeting. He is S-Class rank 8, so right above King and right below Drive Knight. At the meeting, he was the one that kind of commented that, wow, everybody's here gathering, and then he comments on Pig God because he's, shoving an entire, bag of burgers down his mouth, and he's just like, oh, and Zombie Man's, like, disgusted by this. He's like, does that pig ever stop eating? Well, considering his name is Pig God, I would assume no. Now, unfortunately, he does not take part in the alien invasion by Boros and the Dark Matter Thieves, so we don't really get to see what he could do there, although I think that's for the best, because being able to regenerate from pretty much every wound does not make you invincible. He still very much has the overall strength and speed of a regular human being. That's the problem. It's just that it's really hard for him to die, but if he's up against a really strong opponent, like Mesogard or Boros would definitely, like, it might even be like, he might be able to survive, but there's nothing he could do to win, so I'm sure he's probably used to dealing with these kind of things. He's probably used to sizing up monsters and realizing, which ones I might have a chance at just, freaking tanking my way through, and that's how he wins, honestly, most of his fights, just getting dealt, like, a redonkulous amount of damage, and then just waiting on your opponent to either be exhausted, or the damage that you're dealing might be minuscule, but if it, is stacked up over time and time again, eventually you'll win. One of the reasons why Zombie Man became an S-Class hero, and we don't know the full specs on this, but something that was revealed in a data book is that one time Zombie Man got into a fight with a monster that lasted 140 hours before the fight was finally resolved and Zombie Man finally won. So he has, like, basically a godly amount of stamina and regeneration. Like, it's really hard to kill the dude. The only way to really kill him is to reduce him to mincemeat, which is easier said than done, depending on which kind of monster you're fighting against, Let's say you're fighting against some giant muscular, I'm freaking, I don't know, death spike, and I'm gonna ram a death spike through you. You can ram the death spike through Zombie Man, and he'd be like, oh, that sucks, and he can, reducing him to mincemeat, that's like a whole other level. I mean, that would take a lot of power. You would need something along the lines of, Genus's incineration cannon, or, Boros's death laser to do something like that. Not every monster is equipped to dealing that level of damage to a human. And that's really the only way to put Zombie Man down. So, in that one particular battle, he was just getting hit and slobber knockered all over the place and blood everywhere and just regenerating time and time and time again. And eventually, probably the damage he was doing to the monster was probably very little, but just 140 hours with all this stamina and with all this regeneration capabilities, he eventually probably just nickel and dimed this monster down to nothing and just, alright, I'm all out of death spikes. So I'm like, yep, you sure are. And then that's how he ended the freaking... Probably that's how it went down. We don't really know much about that fight other than just, that little trivia note there. Right, so that's probably the reason he evaded the alien invasion. He probably figured, okay, this is a giant ship that was capable of wiping out all of City A. Mesolgard is this giant... there's no way I can beat this thing. Even if I survive, which is possible, the damage I could do to this thing would probably not just be negligible, it would be nothing. It would be nil. Because, like I said, he has the regular strength of a comparable to a regular human adult. So all he has to rely on in terms of dealing out damage are conventional weaponry, which I admit looks badass in a lot of the fan art, where he's holding his Desert Eagle, or he's got a freaking katana, or an axe, he's holding the axe in one hand and a gun in the other, and he's all bandaged up, and he looks like, ready for a battle. I would seriously play this guy in a video game. Oh man, that would be cool in a video game. I'm thinking of a mechanic where, because I don't know about you, but whenever I'm playing an RPG or something and I'm going up against a boss, the first thing I always try to do, instead of just trying to think of a strategy to take it down, the first thing I always try is, let me just see if I can tank this. Let me just see if I can run in and just start hacking and slashing at this boss and see who dies first. That's the easiest solutions, usually the correct one, Occam's razor it up. And so I usually try that first, and if that fails and I die a few times, I'm like, okay, let me try, I have to get clever with this. So I would be really interested in playing a video game starring Zombie Man, which incorporates his regeneration mechanics. So, the whole point of the game is attacking monsters and just tanking everything, and you have a regeneration gauge and stuff. That would be really cool to have that. But anyway, yeah, so, He all he has to work with are conventional weaponry. They look cool, but their limits to power are not that great when you're fighting a demon level threat or above, right? So we don't really get to see him all that much, but in the recent arc, during the monster invasion, we do get to see him doing some things. We get to see him doing some detective work. So not only is he a zombie and a man, he's also a detective, so that's pretty cool also. And so he's trying to figure out what the whole deal is with the Monster Association, right? He's trying to figure out where their base is, who's the mastermind behind all this. And in the webcomic, he has an idea who it is right away. In the Maroda version, it's he basically is at the right place at the right time, and he spots Armored Gorilla taking out Martial Gorilla, and he decides to follow Armored Gorilla, and it's going to lead into what's going to happen in the webcomic. In the webcomic, he eventually runs into Dr. Genus and Armored Gorilla. You remember from the House of Evolution, the first kind of major story arc of One Punch Man, where you have Carnage Kabuto, and then Saitama, it was late for the sale on Saturday, so he just decks Carnage Kabuto, which, by the way, Carnage Kabuto, in his, enraged form, was in fact a dragon level threat. That's what he was classified as. He might have been a low-grade, dragon level threat, dragon minus, if you want to call him, but yeah, he was dragon level, so that was, who was in charge of this. And then after the events, Dr. Genus and Armored Gorilla, they kind of leave. They're the only survivors, and they set up a takoyaki stand. And Dr. Genus, I guess, was responsible for the creation of Zombie Man. What he had was there was a series of experiments at the House of Evolution that was the Immortal series, trying to create a truly immortal being. And Zombie Man was test subject number 66. And so he was the only success out of this entire run. And so Zombie Man, using his master detective skills, which he just has, shows up and he's like, oh, Dr. Genus, I know you guys in the House of Evolution, you're behind the whole abduction of that kid and the Monster Association. It was you guys. And Dr. Genus is just like, what? He has no idea what's going on with the Monster Association or anything. He's just like, dude, all we got is freaking octopus dumplings. Like, I could hook you up with like a sweet 2-for-1 kind of deal, but that's all we got. There is no House of Evolution anymore. You know, Genus incinerated it, and then Saitama wiped out our star, you know, Carnage Kabuto. So we got nothing left, really. And this was actually a very pivotal moment in the story, in the webcomic, because this is the point where we find out the source or the reason behind Saitama's ungodly strength. It's because he broke his limiter. Like, every living being has a limiter placed on them, and Saitama just broke his. And that's like the whole concept of that is what Dr. Genus explains in Zombie Man. But anyway, later on, Zombie Man joins in for the fight in the Monster Association. He's usually a guy that seems to go in alone. I would imagine he has a kind of nihilistic view of the world, honestly, considering he was experimented on for so long and that he can't die. So, and he's mentioned several times, like, dying is something that proves very difficult for me, so he's just like, whatever. But he joins in with the rest of the Hero Association to go after the kid in the Monster Association. So the first monster that Zombie Man encounters upon entering the Monster Association is a vampire. That's right, just a straight-up vampire. Suck your blood and all that kind of crap. God, I love One Punch Man. And it's a demon-level threat, and I don't know if this means that the name of the vampire is Pure Blood, like Pure Blood the Vampire, blah, or this just means that it is, in fact, a purebred vampire that just, you know, doesn't have a real name. I don't know, but the point is, it's a freaking vampire, you know, and it goes through the motions with fighting Zombie Man, and it's like, your blood tastes like crap. Isn't there anyone with better blood I can taste? And Zombie Man's there lying on the ground, and he's looks like he's defeated, but he gets back up and just kind of like brushes his arm. He's like, nah, you didn't do anything to me. I'm sorry. And he's just like, why are you still alive? And there's a moment where Zombie Man is like, you know, he takes out his axe and his sword or whatever, and he's just like, man, you know, I didn't want to exercise today, but it looks like it's gonna get a little sloppy. It's gonna get a little moist up in here. Yeah, you just cut to a time lapse. He just, like, oh, it's gonna get wet up in here, and then just 30 minutes later. Like, that's all that we need to know. And we cut to the room, and it's just absolute carnage. It's like a freaking Gallagher performance up in this place. Like, blood everywhere, body parts strewn about, and you see the vampire Pure Blood just lying there with only its head remaining. Like, its entire body has been ripped apart. It's just his head now. But being a vampire, it can still speak for a little while, anyway. And the vampire doesn't have the regeneration abilities, so even if it's still alive, it's just a head. So the vampire's like, how? I gave you so many fatal wounds. You should have died so many times. And Zombie Man's just like, he's covered in blood. His outfit's just ruined, and he's just drenched in goo. And he's just like, yeah, got me pretty tired there. You gave me about, I'd say about 200 fatal wounds. It's gonna take about a whole 3 minutes for my automatic recovery to fix this, so, whatever, and then he walks away. Now, unfortunately, the next monster he fights was the dragon-level threat Homeless Emperor, who is able to create these light orbs that just, basically incinerate anything they touch. Now, to be fair, he was able to take one of those without getting completely incinerated, but he did lose a sizable chunk of his torso, as in, like, all of it. It looked like a freaking donut after this was over, and he drops, but even that's not enough to kill him, even though he had everything removed. Everything must go. Heart, lungs, stomach, kidney, liver, everything in this area, just spinal cord, everything just gone. And he was able to regenerate all of that. All of these organs in here came back just fine. So that's kind of the limit of his regeneration. Something he did mention, though, is if he lost an entire arm, a limb, it would take about 15 minutes for him to completely recover from that. All right, now you have to understand, first off, I know there's other, like, we've been watching anime for a long time. I would assume you've probably seen other, characters that can regenerate a limb like nothing. Like, I lost an arm, oh, that was really hard. Like Piccolo from DBZ and characters from Toriko. And I think even, like, couldn't Madara do that, in Naruto after a certain point, after he attained the Sage of Six Paths power, he could just, like, regenerate body parts without it being a big deal. But the thing is, you have to understand is that Zombie Man is not a god. Zombie Man is not magic. He doesn't have any mystical abilities. Zombie Man, he is a product of science! And that's the mad science, granted, but still science. That's the whole point. So even though, he's not as, like, he can't just regenerate a limb like that,
15 minutes, that's still kind of commendable. You know, like, this video you're watching right now is probably maybe gonna be double that. You know, definitely gonna be more than that, but it might be double. You know, Zombie Man already had enough time to regenerate his arm, lop it off, and then regenerate it again. You know?
So, it's pretty impressive, right? And he also spoke about that automatic full recovery thing that took 3 minutes. And granted, when he was done fighting the vampire, he was all covered in wounds and everything, but he wasn't losing any limbs. The vampire probably just, like, pounded into him. The vampire probably had superhuman strength, just punched the crap out of him, broke so many bones, ruptured all these internal organs, probably, like, shredding him with his teeth, and, you know, all the arteries, all this blood just spurting everywhere like a geyser. But he didn't actually lose any limbs. So I guess there's like, alright, automatic full body recovery, 3 minutes, heals all up my organs that took, you know, severe trauma, all my broken bones will heal, all of my arteries will heal up. It also doesn't seem like broken bones mean anything to him, because after he got his entire body, like, just, like the center of his body just obliterated by Homeless Emperor, he was still standing up, despite not having a spinal cord at that point. So, you know, he could stand up with regardless. It was also mentioned, I think this was in an audiobook or something, that he actually fought against Carnage Kabuto in like a trial while he was at the House of Evolution, and only his head remained, and he was able to regenerate his entire body from just his head. Alright, an entire body from just his head. We don't know how long it took him to do that, but, you know, he was able to do it is kind of impressive at all. I would assume that there's probably something in Zombie Man's head, in his brain, that allows him to regenerate his limbs, and if you incinerate his head entirely, he wouldn't be able to come back, because you'd figure, like, if he lost an arm, wouldn't the arm begin to replicate and heal as well as the stump, so you would have, like, 2 Zombie Mans around? It doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like once you cut off a limb, that limb is truly dead, and then Zombie Man will just grow another arm. Maybe there's a fail-safe into that. The whole thing about One Punch Man is, like, ridiculous, like superhero abilities and feats and everything like that. So, and a lot of this doesn't make any sense. Like, the whole point of Saitama's power, like, limiter removal, doesn't really make a lot of sense when you really want to break it down to, like, kind of levels. So I could sit here all day and be like, well, you know, Zombie Man's gotta have, like, something in his head that allows him to heal a wound, but it knows when an arm is severed not to heal that severed arm, but also he could stand up without a spinal cord. So, you know, I could sit here and analyze this all day. The point is, we're only going to see him dead once he's reduced to mincemeat. I still would also like to think that if his head was truly just obliterated, like if it just point-blank range with Genos's incineration cannon just blew off his freaking head, he would still able to just regenerate his head. Maybe it doesn't go... Tell you what, here's an idea. Maybe it doesn't go by a certain body part. Maybe it just goes by the amount of body that's left. You know, like if more than a certain percentage of his body remains, then the regeneration will kick in. And if he's reduced to mincemeat, he won't be able to do that. But if it's just an arm or a leg that's severed, the reason the arm doesn't recover, because it's just an arm, it doesn't have enough percentage of that body mass, but it's like, alright, well, the majority of the body is this, so it'll survive. But we've seen him take a lot of damage, and he was able to come back from that, so yeah. This is, of course, though, balanced out with the whole lack of strength and speed thing. He doesn't have, you know, superhuman strength or speed or, like, defense capabilities or anything like that. He has to completely rely on conventional weapons, and, like, I'm sure he's probably good at, like, hand-to-hand combat, I would assume. He's very popular in the Hero Association, rank 8, even though one came out and said that there's a rumor that he's actually the weakest. I don't think that's a rumor. I think that's just straight up he is the weakest. I think Genus could probably beat him. Because the thing with him is, like, I already said this, but even if you don't beat him, that doesn't mean he's gonna win. You know, like, Genus... even if he doesn't straight up kill him, even though he could just reduce him to mincemeat or just incinerate him with his cannon, even if he just broke all of his legs and is lying down, he could regenerate and come back. But there's nothing Zombie Man could do to hurt Genus, really, with just normal firearms and a sword and an axe or whatever. There's nothing he could do to hurt Tatsumaki or Atomic Samurai. Atomic Samurai could definitely probably kill him. You know, just use, like, Atomic Slash and then you're done. So he is probably, like, the weakest, in terms of strength. Because even even Child Emperor, you know, he's got all his gadgets and everything, and even Child Emperor had that ability, that soccer dribble thing, which he said, oh yeah, that totally gave him a concussion when I did my soccer dribble. This is like a 6-year-old kid. Yeah, I think he's a little bit, I think he's like 8 or 9, but still, he's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna, you know, kick you, and I was able to do that much damage, so even he might have some, like, superior strength than the ordinary adult, and Zombie Man is just limited to that. But one thing that's cool is after he survived his ordeal at the Monster Association, he was basically just reduced to a pile of charred flesh that was slowly regenerating, just kind of observing everything in front of him the entire time. You know, while all of like Saitama and Garo fought, and Psychos and Tatsumaki were doing everything, and you had King there. He was just basically on the sidelines, like just watching, because he couldn't do anything else. But after that occasion, he went back to Dr. Genus later, and he asked Dr. Genus to remove my limiter. You know, like I want the same level of power Saitama had after I saw it, you know, in person. And Dr. Genus basically told him, you know, I can't do that. I can't remove your limiter. There's some reason why I can't do it. But I think he said something very vague about there might be a way you could defeat Saitama, or there might be a way you can achieve a level of power equal to him under certain conditions. That's what he said. Very vague, and we haven't seen anything from him since. So I have no idea what that implies, because there is ways you can defeat Saitama under certain circumstances. For instance, if you're King and playing a fighting game, you could definitely defeat Saitama under those circumstances. Or if you're Bang and you're doing like that mallet game, you can beat him that way too. Maybe that's what Genus was talking about. It's like, well, you can't beat him in a straight up fight. That's just not going to happen. But you could kick his ass at Magic the Gathering, and he just breaks out of magic like, okay, we need to learn. You know, I don't know. But, you know, I think one's whole thing with this character was, I want to design just a really cool looking hero. And what is cool? The undead are cool, zombies are cool, guns are cool, swords are cool, axes are cool, blood is cool. Just and regeneration capabilities are cool. Getting all mangled up and returning to life, that's cool. So just throw it all into one character. Give him a freaking, you know, pale skin, trench coat, red eyes, and you'll be set. You'll be good. It's the world of manga. That'll definitely sell merch at that point. So yeah, thanks to One for creating the character. I definitely think we're going to be seeing a lot more of him coming up in the Maroda version of the webcomic. I definitely think we're going to be seeing and it's really awesome too, because we're going to be seeing him very shortly. In fact, he might just show up in the next chapter, because that whole discussion about meeting Dr. Genus and the whole limiter thing with Saitama, that happened like right around now, what the Maroda comic is at right now. So we're probably going to be seeing him, maybe not in the next chapter, but like the chapter after that. Like, it's going to be soon. We're going to see the whole story with Zombie Man and Dr. Genus and how that's revealed and everything. He used to be a member of the you know, House of Evolution, and maybe even expand upon that a little bit, of how he was created and how he escaped and all that stuff. Maybe that's going to be elaborated a little bit more when he, you know, talks to Dr. Genus and Armored Gorilla in the upcoming chapters. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. A lot of fun. The next one will be, I don't know, but I wrote it down somewhere. I think next might be Pig God, if I'm remembering correctly. We might be doing Pig God next. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Tekking101 signing out. Yeah.